Welcome to Weekly Talkback. My name is Kevin Beers.
And I'm David Whitten.
And this is the show where we get to talk to Pastor Dave about his message from Sunday. This week was September 24th, 2023. And the title of the message was Wrestle with God. So this is all about the story of Jacob going to meet his brother, and he's afraid his brother's going to kill him. But he's decided he's going to fess up to everything that he had done, try to patch things over,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And he ends up wrestling with God during the night before he actually meets Esau the next day. Now, you went the direction of wrestling with his conscience.
Yeah.
Okay, I tend to go a little bit more on wrestling with God himself. But where's your how did you get there? Maybe that's the question.
Well, I mean, I guess I tried to personalize it and put myself into Jacob's place. So he's doing very well in Haran. He has got 2 wives now, and he's got all kinds of livestock, and he's doing very well for himself. But this sense of guilt has been haunting him for 20 years, and he decides that he needs to go back, even though Esau has threatened to kill him on sight. And so that night, he sends everyone across the river, and he ends up by himself. And so I asked the question, if that was me, why would I do that? And the only thing that I can come up with is that he still is struggling with whether or not this is the right thing to do. Right thing to do, yes, but somehow trying to find whatever initiative or strength that he could find to go ahead and have the courage to go through with it.
Okay, well, because of the fear. I mean, because his brother has sworn to kill him on sight.
Yeah.
Now that was 20 years.
It was 20 years.
20
yep.
years. So it's 20.
He's
20,
60 now. He was 40 when he duped his son, brother.
So there's 20 years has gone by, but I would say I think most people. I actually had my class reunion this past weekend, and one of the things was I thought about, like, I said something to somebody way back in high school. They don't even remember it, but it has bothered me to this day that I never apologized for it, even though time has passed, nobody cares, that's gone away. But yeah, just working up the courage to say, you know what, hey, I wronged you back then, and I never apologized for that. And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I then felt better that I was able to clear the air.
Well, and I've had many instances in my life where that has happened, where I don't remember. Or I tell someone I want to ask their forgiveness for something I had done, and they don't remember. But I did have an instant of someone who did me wrong, and to this day, I remembered it. Well, not to this day, but I remembered the wrong, and it bothered me. It was 15 years later, out of the blue, this man who lives in Canada, who I worked together with in Africa. He came out and said, I feel like I have wronged you somehow. And he said, I don't really remember the incident, but I feel like I've wronged you. And I want to just ask for your forgiveness. And boy, that was just a real spirit of reconciliation that, to this day I appreciated. So I did write back and explain where I took insult and offense from. And he slightly remembered the incident, but somehow it was really hurting his conscience. And so that's where I was coming into this. How would you interpret the night of wrestling with God?
Well, a lot of times maybe your interpretation is better, because for me, it's like, how can you wrestle with God and win? I mean, you can't. I mean, he created the universe. So yeah, you're not going to win that battle. So and I always struggled with, what does that passage actually mean?
Right.
Right. And I think maybe I wouldn't say he was wrestling with his conscience, but he was trying to make his life right, which is a struggle in itself. And maybe the wrestling was you don't trust God enough to be with you during this get together with your brother. I don't know exactly, but I've always been a little more literal on it, where the wrestling itself was with God.
But why would he be wrestling God at that point in time?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I guess
I mean, I would think that if he had put his mind to the fact, and because earlier he decided to go back, and so he's in the process of going back, and then that night he wrestles with God. Is he wrestling God to push him out of the way, or or is God trying to wrestle with Jacob to keep him from going across? I mean, to me, the only thing that I can come up with is that he's still wrestling or struggling with the decision.
But he doesn't know it's God until it's all over. So,
well, at what point does he not know it? I mean, does he don't know it, God? Because he says at the break of day, the guy tries to get away and run. And Jacob, still not necessarily knowing that it was an agent of God, at least it doesn't say, he says, don't leave until you bless me. Why would he ask that to a man unless somewhere along the line perhaps he's starting to think, okay, this is...
Okay.
But the thing that bothers me about the name Israel, which means he who wrestles with God and overcomes, is... This is God we're talking about. How do you overcome God? I mean, that just, to me, strikes me as like, that's weird. that ain't right, you know.
That's where some of my problem comes in. Now, the other thing is, Jacob also says, tell me what your name is.
Yeah.
Now, I do understand the reasoning behind that, because knowing someone's name gives you power over them.
Mm-hmm. Or at least it identifies who the...
Yes, but that identification, that there's a power over someone else when you have their name.
Okay.
So when he asks that, the angel says, well, why do you want to know my name? And never actually says what it is. So he never actually gives it. Yeah,
he doesn't.
And I find that a fascinating piece of the story too.
Well, what's even fascinating, or more fascinating, is the fact that I was just working on Exodus chapter 3 text where Moses asked the burning bush, there's a voice that's coming out of the burning bush, what is your name?
Oh, I did not realize that.
I just met the connection. I have to think about that a little bit.
Yeah, because if you look that up, having someone's name gave you power over them.
But does it give you power over them?
Well, that's my understanding, and this is off the top of my head, so maybe I have some of that wrong.
I know it. I know that naming someone identifies that person. You begin to know that person, but having power over that person.
Well, so when Adam is told to name all the animals, that gives him dominion over them as he names them.
Okay.
So that's part of that connection there.
I see.
So maybe that'll help you with your next sermon. I don't know that. I know I had something else in my mind, and now I can't think of what it is. But we can wrap it up there, I guess.
Well,
or do you have more?
No, I mean, the only thing I would say about it is that oftentimes we look at a story like Jacob. You know, there's another story earlier where Jacob climbs this ladder, or he sees angels descending and ascending this ladder. You know, if you take that and you can preach on it, and you can take wrestling with God and preach on it, but if you don't know the whole story, I think you miss a major point in the story of Jacob and Esau, and that is that they did reconcile at the very end. And my sermon was centered on the wrestling part of, but the point of the whole thing was he did find the courage and the strength and the willingness to go back and reconcile with his brother, come what may. And Lord, you know, what a wonderful story it is, because Esau, after 20 years, his heart has softened. And he came forward and he grabbed Jacob and hugged him and kissed him, and they both wept as long lost brothers, and that's, to me, that's the real point of the story, was the power of reconciliation.
I did think of what I wanted to say earlier. So
you wrote off everything I just said.
No. I remember. I know everything you said now. I thought it was a good synopsis of everything right
Okay.
there.
Okay.
But I did ask you the question: what if he had not wrestled with God? Because in the outcome of that wrestling match was that he became the founder of Israel.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's
he
the father.
became Israel.
Yeah.
The father of the entire, well, I guess Abraham's credit with the entire thing, but Israel is named after him because the entire nation comes from him.
Well, the 12 sons
Right.
are the different tribes of Israel. I mean, it's yeah.
Right. Now, if he had not wrestled with God, he would have never received that name. So
Correct.
I guess what I would look at if I had to go back and like figure out what the story is all about would be, okay, there's some significance because had he not wrestled with God, would Israel even exist?
Right.
And, that sort of thing. And maybe
Well, yeah, because I think in part of the process of wrestling, see, his former name was dropped, Jacob, which meant heel, which was not really a positive name. In that process of naming the agent of God naming Jacob Israel, to me it's a passage of transition. He's transitioning from the old sinful Jacob, the heel who duped his brother, to Israel, the father of a great nation. So part of that whole process in that wrestling was the fact that he transformed from Jacob to Israel.
And maybe he had to become worthy so that wrestling
That could be. I mean, if you notice throughout many instances in the Bible, Paul being one, that transitioning from a non-believer to a believer often.
Abram to Abraham.
Yeah. Sarai to Sarah.
Right.
This is maybe a part of that whole process of transitioning, transforming to a new identity.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. That's it for this week. So if you did not hear Pastor Dave's message from Sunday, a link will be in the description, so you can go listen to that, come back, listen to this, see where we went with that when we dug into it a little bit further. And that's where we'll end, so we'll see you next week.
And make comments, please do, because so far, if I look back, I don't see a whole lot of commenting. So make a comment. Challenge us. If you think that we are way off the deep end somewhere, tell us. We'd love to know. So be blessed.